Supongo que tendréis algunas preguntas que hacer. Las vamos a limitar 8 o 10 minutos, así que lo que sí que os ruego es una pregunta por persona, por favor. Adelante. No veo ninguna pregunta.
I have a question in connection with the last mention you made to the open source software or free software. It's not the same, but yeah. I would like you to make some more details on the way the free or the gift economy is connected with free software.
Yeah. So free software, open source software is a great example of the gift economy. Now, you know, the reason why people create open source software is not most what people think. It's not just charity or altruism. It is basically done for personal reasons. They create open source software because they want the software to be created. They have a need, and so they write the software to fill that need. Or perhaps they work for a company that has that need, and so they write the software. Once they've written the software, there's an advantage to sharing it. And the advantage of sharing it is that other people, just like putting computers in the hands of individuals allowed us to discover what computers are for, making software open source finds not only new applications for that software, new utility, but also can find new people who can help improve it. So what you have in the gift in open source software is basically good self-interested reasons to write the software. What then happens is you end up with an opportunity to make money around that software. One of the chapters in the book is about how to compete with free, and Microsoft has the longest history of competing with free. Microsoft's been competing with free really its entire history. Bill Gates' original letter to hobbyists saying you should pay for software in what, 1970 something, was creating the notion of paying for software. He very successfully did that. And today, and over the last 10 years, they've been competing with open source, both in Linux and then MySQL and on the desktop, etc. What we now have discovered is that the software market basically divides into two. You have the free software market and you have the paid software market. And the reason people pay for software is because they want service and they want support, they want security, they want to lower the risk. When you pay for software, you get a contract. And that contract has a certain service obligation. And that means that if I pay for a software, when something goes wrong, I have someone to call. And just the confidence that you have someone to call is worth paying for. You're not really paying for the software. You're paying for the confidence that it will work. And this idea of you give away, in the same way you give away the abundance, the bits, and you sell the scarcity, and that's the help. And that's the customized support of that, completely compatible with the traditional free business models. And I think there's a recent report that says the Linux ecosystem is now about $25 billion of annual revenues. That's amazing. That's $25 billion of revenues built on free, all because people use free to kind of sample the products, to get into the market, and then are willing to pay for something more. So in a sense, it's freemium. It's the freemium business model on top of the so-called gift economy.
I think that free is based on quite a lot of things, of digital things basically, becoming very abundant, but on the other side, there's quite a few agents that are trying to reintroduce artificial scarcity in the system. You could say that quite a lot of the network neutrality debate is about that.
Yeah.
You could argue that, and you could definitely say that digital rights management in music and video is about that. What's your opinion on that artificial scarcity?
Yeah, I think economics always wins. DRM and network neutrality are definitely attempts to fight, Bertrand's law. Bertrand's law was, again, in a competitive market, price falls to the marginal cost. Well, those efforts are attempts to make it a non-competitive market. There's an old phrase about the internet is that it perceives censorship as damage and routes around it, but it also perceives artificial scarcity as damage and routes around it. I mean, I think the story of DRM is now pretty clear. Long term, it's going to lose. People don't want it. It diminishes it sort of subtracts value from products rather than adding it, and it's quite easy to get around. Network neutrality is a little less obvious. It's not clear exactly how the network will route around it, but I'm sure it will over time. So my answer is that it's entirely natural that people would try to create artificial scarcity, and artificial scarcity is great if you can get away with it, and God knows we all try to. But in this case, you're fighting economics, and it's really hard to fight economics.
Morning, and thanks for your words. I want to know what's your perception about the future of printed media? Is space circulation going to continue? What's your forecast?
Yeah, well, I get this question a lot, as you might imagine. There's lots of different kinds of printed media, right? There's newspapers, there are glossy monthly magazines, and there are books. I think newspapers, my experience is mostly in the United States. Newspapers, what is a newspaper? Is a newspaper journalists and writing and editing and news, or is a newspaper the paper that it's printed on? I think we're realizing that newspaper is the former and not the latter, that the value in the newspaper was not the delivery mechanism, but instead was the news. So I think that that the printed newspapers are in decline. I don't think they obviously are in decline in the United States, and I suspect my children will not read a printed newspaper. I don't think that newspapers won't have a place. I just don't think that place is going to be 18 hours late and leaving ink on your fingers. Then you have magazines like my own. It's a monthly magazine. What we do, it doesn't work well on the web. We do 8,000 word stories with design and photography, this packaging of ideas. On the web, it's 16 pages. You have to click through. The photographs turn into thumbnails. The design is completely lost. It doesn't work. So I think that one of my sister publications is Vogue magazine. Vogue magazine is fine. Vogue magazine's never been better. People want glossy pages to look at beautiful pictures. The web is not the natural place for that. So I think that kind of magazine is going to be fine, even in an internet, even as the consumers move online. And then finally you have books, and books are. Again, books don't really work online. Nobody wants to read 80,000 words on their screen. So I think that when people say, "Is print dead?" I always say, "Which print do you mean?" Some print is dead. Other print is going to be with me my whole life.
Hi, my question is about the environment and how does freemium connect with our world, the environment, how all these virtually abundant and infinite resources connect with freemium, because there is a physical limit, and where's the limit in freemium and the
limit in so the difference between atoms and bits is that when you waste atoms, you have what economists call negative externalities. So when gas is cheap, we waste gas, and it's because we weren't measuring the negative externality, which is carbon emissions and climate change and all that. The nice thing about bits is that they don't have that many negative externalities. When you waste bits, basically the only bits are directly related to electricity. And it is true that the YouTubes of the world use a lot of electricity, and electricity probably does have an environmental impact. But I think that over time we're going to reduce that simply because of the cost. Obviously carbon concerns and climate change, et cetera, are the reasons. But the reason Google is so incentivized to invest in renewable energies is partly out of social consciousness and partly out of self-interest, which is they just want to lower the cost of electricity by using more renewable sources. So once that's true, once you have electricity being largely renewable, then the negative externalities, the environmental cost of waste in the digital realm becomes very small. It is the devices that we carry. It is obviously, to some extent our time, but it doesn't have the same sort of environmental impact as waste would in the traditional atoms economy. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
I have a question in connection with the last mention you made to the open source software or free software. It's not the same, but I would like you to make some more details on the way the free or the gift economy.
It is basically done for personal reasons. They create open source software because they want the software to be created. They have a need, and so they write the software to fill that need. Or perhaps they work for a company that has that need, and so they write the software. Once they've written the software, there's an advantage to sharing it. And the advantage of sharing it is that other people, just like putting computers in the hands of
Supongo que tendréis algunas preguntas que hacer. Las vamos a limitar 8 o 10 minutos, así que lo que sí que os ruego es una pregunta por persona, por favor. Adelante. No veo ninguna pregunta.
It's connected with free software.
Yeah. So free software, open source software is a great example of the gift economy. Now, the reason why people create open source software is not most what people think. It's not just charity or altruism. It is